Okay.
And I think I'll just share my slides if you want so that people know when they arrive where they're supposed to be. There we go.
Yeah. So we have some people coming in now and joining us as we speak. Perfect. Great. So hi everyone that's joining right now. Thank you so much. Just wait another few seconds and then we'll go ahead and get started as more people come in. Okay. Perfect.
Hi, everybody. Fiona from Clio. Just I'd be all, you know, shaking your hand, and I wouldn't be shaking your hand. What am I saying? In a pre-COVID time, I would be shaking your hand and and I'd be seeing your faces. But we're a webinar, so I'm not going to see. I guess I'm not going to see your faces, but I will look at your names and see if there's any familiar names on this list. A few people I know here. Nice to see, and a whole bunch of people I don't know, which is great. So.
And Jess is mentioning hello. Drew saying hi, Fiona. Thanks for doing this. Okay, so you know what?
Welcome.
Let's get started, and I'll just do my little quick introduction, then we'll dive right in.
Got it.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for PLEAC's webinar on video integration. So before we begin, I do just want to kind of do a land acknowledgement, just slightly different today, just to bring everyone's attention to our recently celebrated holiday Thanksgiving and what has been historically known as Columbus Day in the United States. It is essential to acknowledge, learn from, and reflect on historical and ongoing colonialism of Indigenous people and lands across North America. So in honor of the Reclaimed Indigenous Peoples Day that recently did just pass, please stay informed about what is going on in Nova Scotia and the threat to Mi'kmaq treaty rights. There is a desperate need to dispel the myth that Indigenous people are lawbreakers when they occupy and protect their own land. So please remember Indigenous rights are human rights, and there are many resources online available for you to find out how to help directly. So that's something I definitely wanted to mention today. Otherwise, we do have a great webinar for you. I want to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. So if someone you know couldn't tune in today, the recording will be made available later on. If you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. The questions that we receive will be saved for the end of the webinar, and we have at least 15 minutes at the very least or so at the end dedicated just for that Q&A. Otherwise, we are lucky to welcome our presenter today, Fiona MacCool. Fiona is the Digital Project Manager for CLEO, Community Legal Education Ontario. She has helped develop and manage the Steps to Justice website. She manages live chat services for that project. She does social media for the organization. As technical lead, Fiona has done a large amount of technical work for the site and set up and administered all the social media channels and components, including Facebook page, Twitter, Vimeo, and so on. She's also given a lot of talks and presentations training across Ontario, and we're very grateful to have her today. That's all sort of a SparkNotes version of all of that you do, Fiona. But go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks everybody. So I was asked by Jess and Hannah to do this, and I was full of disclaimers about how I'm not a filmmaker. And I was like, you want me to do this? I just taught myself this stuff very recently, and I'm capital A amateur here. But I think that might be an advantage, because I think they were like, well, I mean, the thing about PLEAC is that a lot of the organizations, not all of you, but a lot of the organizations in PLEAC like don't have budgets to have videos made professionally by people who are actually way more skilled than me. So perhaps what I might show you today are things that you could do yourself, or someone you work with could do yourself. So perhaps the fact that I'm a huge amateur will be, I'm pretending that it's actually an asset in this situation. But I did come up with a funny disclaimer, which at the beginning of every webinar, we do a legal disclaimer. So I decided to do, to make it slightly different. So I'm reading it aloud. This webinar is for general information purposes only, and is not technical or artistic advice. It is not intended to be used as advice for a specific motion picture or television series or documentary short subject. Anyway, so yeah, this webinar is being recorded today and reflects developments in my very modest skills and the software Clio could afford to let me use before this date. So again, I'm sure a lot of you have worked with lots of other tools than the ones I'm going to show you today, and you might know way more. So I'm really hoping when we get to the discussion part that I can learn from you too, because of course, you know, working in a nonprofit, we're all jack of all trades, master of few. So I'm looking forward to learning, and please bear in mind that anything I might show you today would be a brief overview and would be my attempt to show you how I kind of taught myself and to make, and I can only use things that are very easy. So hopefully you'll find the things I'm going to show you easy to use. So I thought I would just basically talk about two kinds of videos that you can make. One is a whiteboard animation style video, and the other is screencasting or using like a recorded interview. I thought I'd talk a little bit about that and show you some screen captures and some products and some samples of videos that I've created. They're not public because, you know, they're just a first draft. So of course they would reflect lots of further collaboration with Clio folks to make them perfect. But we kind of got the ball rolling. So now a few of us post-COVID are all kind of making these on our own. So the ones I'm going to show you are not publicly available yet because they still need to, so they're still works in progress, but I thought they'd give you an idea. So I was hoping to show you Video Scribe and Doodly, which are two pretty low cost tools that let you do your own whiteboard animation videos. And lastly, we're using Zoom right now, but you can use Zoom or any webinar tool to do kind of interview, screencasting, to record a webinar. So that's also a really cheap, free way to make a video as well. And I thought we could talk a little bit about how to plan your video project. I'm certainly no expert on that, but I can kind of talk about like our process for the few that we've made, and then a really like obvious stuff about where to host them, how to share them, that kind of stuff. So hopefully that outline is useful. And I have made, I'm happy to share my slides to the degree that they're helpful with you guys after at any time. And if it's an excuse for any of you to email me and follow up, then I will appreciate hearing from you about anything that I get into today. So whiteboarding. So you guys might have seen videos about whiteboarding. There's some really, really beautiful and sophisticated ones where, you know, they'll have a famous lecture by an academic about something, and you'll actually see an individual, unbelievably skilled artist like drawing, you know, they'll be talking about Marxism and they'll like draw Karl Marx like perfectly, of course. So I think like that standard is really high and nothing we've created can do that. But it's that idea that you're kind of having something be drawn and moved around while you're doing a voiceover. And so the advantage of whiteboarding animation videos for the kind of work we all do is they're incredibly easy to create and edit. So they're much easier than having a filmmaker come and do talking head stuff, which you'd have to re-engage them every time you had to change it. And you'd have to cast it, which is impossible right now because of COVID-19. But the other thing I like about it is that it's very good for giving very simple visual aids to people when you're explaining complex material. So it's boring to talk about how to file your different briefs in a family law case, like which folder they should be put in your continuing record. This stuff is incredibly important, but it's not super exciting. I would think that a short little video thing might provide some you know, visual aids for people who don't want to read through massive walls of text. So that's certainly what has sparked us at Clio wanting to explore this, because we have so much information on steps to justice, but you have to have a pretty high reading level, and you have to have like an ability to engage with lots and lots of text in order to read this stuff. So we thought maybe we'd try and explore some ways to make little videos. So the objectives of the videos, that the whiteboard animations, are to promote the site, so you don't have to do it. But I thought it would be fun to talk about how we could actually use them to make people find the material more interesting. The other advantage is they don't require a filmmaker. Obviously, I am not a filmmaker and I don't have a camera. Well, I mean, I have a camera on my phone like everybody, but nothing I have created that I would show you today or that we can create together in a demo requires there to be a filmmaker, and there are no need for anyone to be together in person. So you're not going on location, you're not asking a lawyer, you know, to come and sit for a one-on-one interview and then needing them to come back and redo it when something changes. It also allows you to blend stock drawing. So you're going to see the two tools I show you have sort of standard scenes and standard sort of characters. So if you were doing one about someone's, if you're doing a healthcare one, you have a little doctor's office, or you have a medical operating room or something, and then you can stick a person in and move them in particular ways. So it kind of allows you to do that. And then once you hit go, a little hand comes out and kind of draws the operating room or whatever you're using, or the house, or the office, whatever. You can also blend your own images and logos and icons. I mean, you have to be careful because that can get a bit crazy looking, a bit clip arty looking, but you can blend your own so you can have a logo. Or I've done things where I've brought in an application form that's actually used, like in landlord tenant law, and then I've, had the person talking about the lease, and then I pulled in a picture of the Ontario Standard lease, that kind of stuff. So you can kind of blend your own. Of course, I can't make my picture of a lease get drawn by hand or anything, but if you spend a little time, you can kind of make them look okay. When you're done, you just basically export them as a video, and then that video is ready to be thrown up into YouTube or Vimeo or something like that. So again, you don't have like post-production. You don't have a big expensive piece of software that you have to learn to edit video. If you have those skills, that's great. It would make it much better for you in your life, but I don't, and I didn't have to get any of that to make the videos I'm going to show you today. So that's, I think, a plus for our sector, I think. The other thing that I realized about the whiteboarding ones is that it would be, in theory, easier to translate them into other languages, because if they're mostly images that are being drawn, the voiceover is something you do at the end. So you could just have somebody translate your voiceover into French, and then have a French person read it and have it timed to the same drawings as they unfold. And then if you had to change if you use a little bit of text, you could just edit that into the French version of that text in a couple of key places. And compared to the cost of making a completely separate parallel video in French, I think would be much easier. So these are some of the things I think that make whiteboarding videos kind of easy for our sector to work with. So that's why I wanted to show them to you. So this is an example from Clio, one I did by myself when I was just kind of testing. So the URL is there on the screen, but I know that sometimes when you're doing screen sharing stuff in Zoom, sometimes you can't embed something inside PowerPoint. So if you bear with me just for a second, you get a close-up of my head for a second, and I'm going to share my screen and go directly to my browser, and that way you can see it. So this is a video that I made, and all I had to work with, this was just to see how easy the tools were to use. So this is a video I made about whether a landlord can refuse to rent to someone if they have a pet. So this is a question we get all the time. So all I had to work with were a few, I think just like 2 sentences, which is a great place to start. So the housing lawyer at Clio just basically told me in a few sentences what the actual law is. Sometimes less is more, right? Because I don't think a video is a great way to explain a complex concept, but I'm going to just play it for you now, and I'm going to stop sharing to make sure that when I share my screen, I have optimized for sound, which I have. Murphy's Law, just always want to check that twice. Whoops, sorry about that. See, problem already. Share my screen, and we're going to go over here. So I'm just going to play that video. It's very short. I think it's 1 minute and 38 seconds, 1 minute and 3 seconds. So hopefully you guys can handle watching it, just to get an idea of what these things look like. And again, it's not public, it's not final, just to kind of kick it off. So here we go. Here at Clio, we get lots of questions from people in Ontario about their legal rights. One of the questions we get often is from tenants who ask, is it legal for a landlord to refuse to rent to me because I have a pet? Well, if you're totally honest about your pets, they may accept a different rental application than yours, and they may rent to somebody else. But let's say you leave it out, or you forget to mention it, and you move in, and your landlord drops by on moving day and meets your surprise furry friend. Well, this might not go so well. The landlord could feel surprised and angry, could tell you that you have to go, that your pet has to go. He could say that this is a no pets building. In fact, he could actually just pull out your rental agreement that you signed with your signature, and he had written in there, no pets allowed. So what are you going to do? Well, in fact, it is illegal in Ontario to force a tenant to sign a rental agreement that says that they can't have a pet. To find out more about this and all kinds of legal problems that tenants might face, visit stepstojustice.ca, your guide to law in Ontario, brought to you by Clio, Community Legal Education Ontario. Okay, so it may not be the easiest thing to see a video through Zoom, but hopefully you were able to see and hear that okay. I'm going to go back to my my presentation now. And so from the current slide, there we go. So that was an example where I only had a few sentences to deal with. So I'm like, decided to try out the different tools and found one that, had a picture of a kitchen, and kind of found a person, and then found a picture of a cat, and I kind of moved them all around, and the rest is history. So that's an example of kind of how you can do it. And then more recently, my colleague sent me a longer script And this was explaining a more complex concept, I guess. And so this one's a little bit longer. Again, not perfect, but I thought if I show you more than one, then you might have more of an idea of kind of the options. So again, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I'm gonna count on Hannah to jump in if, for example, people can't hear or see what I'm showing here, but I haven't actually gotten there just yet. So share. Okay, so let me go escape. Oops. All right, just a second. It's gone full screen on me. All right. So this one is called Applying for a Job with a Youth Record. And I'm just going, this one is a little bit longer, 1 minute and 49 seconds. But in the end, I was given a script. So this was a longer thing where it was like written out for me what to say. But I didn't have any idea about images, what was appropriate, and that kind of thing. And in the end, I think we decided that it's good to share the feedback. We decided that there's too many concepts being explained in this video, that it might be better to just boil it down to like one single concept, the way that we did for the cat one. And so here I'm going to play this one for you again, and I'll rely on somebody telling me if they're having problems hearing or seeing it. But again, this is just 1 minute 49 seconds. Here you go.
Employers in Canada are not supposed to ask you about your youth record. Youth records are private and confidential records kept by the police, the courts, and various government agencies. It has a lot of information, and more than just whether you were charged and found guilty. It also has information about things like your interactions with the police, even if you were not charged. But some employers don't know or care about the law, so they ask you about your youth record anyways. The problem is, it's illegal for anyone, even you, to say anything about your youth record. This means it would be illegal for you to answer the employer's questions. So, what can you do? Well, it depends what they ask. Let's say an employer asks you, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Even if you've got a youth record, you can answer no. This is because in Canada, young people aren't convicted. After an adult is found guilty, the judge decides if they should also be convicted. But if a young person is found guilty, the judge doesn't have the option to convict them. So even if you've got a youth record and the employer asks you if you've been convicted of a crime, you can answer no. An employer might also ask you, do you have a criminal record? Again, you can answer no. This is because a youth record is not a criminal record. A criminal record means a record of criminal convictions. But since young people can't get convictions, they can't get a record of criminal convictions. Even if you have a record that includes a finding of guilt, you don't have a record of criminal convictions, which means you don't have a criminal record. For more information like this, including information about getting a criminal background check, visit stepstojustice.ca, your guide to law in Ontario, brought to you by CLEO, Community Legal Education, Ontario.
Right. Okay. So that one, at the end, I sent it back, and my person was like, oh, it's too complicated at the end. And of course, this was like my third version, because it is complicated. As a layperson, I'm like probably the only person on this webinar that's not a lawyer. I find it really confusing that that person doesn't have a youth record, that they can actually honestly answer no to every single scenario. So in the end, I think we thought we should revise that and shorten it and have it just end with that first question in the job interview. No. And not get into the fact that, well, you also don't have a youth record, and you also don't have a criminal conviction, because you don't have this and you don't have that. So it can be a little complicated, and which is not, we don't have to necessarily get into the specifics of the law, because I won't be very helpful in that particular regard. But I thought that would be an example. I'm just going to go back up here to the particular tools that we use. So on to the geeky stuff about how did I make the damn things. Okay, so there's two tools that I have played around with for this purpose. The first one, which I used to make both of the videos I just showed you, is called Video Scribe. And it's pretty cheap. I think there's even a cheaper price than what's seen on your screen there. But again, this is a very, very basic tool. There's a free trial, and all you end up having left over is like a watermark, which is like a little faint background image. So you can certainly try it before you commit to seeing if you can afford it. You can also you can just buy it for a couple months, make a couple of these, and be done with it. We're currently sharing a single account with a couple of different people, which means we can't be logged in at the same time. So when I come to show you guys Video Scribe in the back end, I'll have to make sure my colleagues are booted out. I've warned them, please don't be in there at 3 o'clock. And so this is the sort of price. I think we bought like a lifetime membership, but this is small potatoes. compared to the price of having a video made. So again, it's got, the reason I liked this one initially more than the other one is it had a lot of images of different people that weren't all just sort of standard white guy and standard sort of Karen. It had a lot of people from different cultures and backgrounds and stuff. So I found that it was a little more flexible, but it's a little more basic than the other tool that I'm going to show you, which is called Doodly. This is sort of what it looks like in the back end when you're editing a video. So again, if you've had experience with this, this isn't news to you, but I will, if we have time and if there's any interest, I was going to actually like screen share the actual program and show you how to make one of these things because I thought it would be kind of fun. But this is an example like when you're done. So this is that video I just showed you about criminal records. So you can see down at the very bottom of the screen, I've shown you in a screen cap, each one of those little segments, 15 seconds here, 20 seconds there, can all be individually edited. So if, for example, you didn't like the wording of that one question in the speech bubble where it says, have you ever been convicted of a crime? You could just click on that little bubble there and edit the words. So it makes it pretty easy to change it later. You'll notice there was a picture of a courtroom that just appeared in the middle of it. That's because the court-related images that were inside the software were not very good. They were all American, so they all had a scruffy-looking white man judge. Some of them were British and had like a big wig, or they had gavels or big eagles, American flags, various things that, even though I'm not a lawyer, I would certainly know that would be rejected at Clio as being like kind of cheesy and not appropriate to the situation. So we actually created our own courtroom drawing, certainly not for my little video experiments, but we did one anyway for a hotspot tool that we have. So I just used the Superior Court of Justice, and then I just took a second screen cap of just the picture of the judge. So that's why you probably notice a bit of a mishmash in that video of like the hand-drawn stuff and then these kind of floating images. So I think if you have too much of that, it can be kind of cheesy, but it's good for you to know that just because you can't find the perfect image inside these tools doesn't mean you can't bring in your own or have your own created. The next one I wanted to show you was a tool called Doodly. And Doodly I think it's a more, it certainly has a bigger marketing budget because as soon as I say the word Doodly, your Facebook will be filled with ads, whether you like it or not, for Doodly. Yeah, so they have they're certainly out there a lot more. There are, I think it's used more. The price, it's a little more expensive, but I think like a lot of them have nonprofit pricing. And so far through the pandemic, I've been applying for lots of nonprofit licenses for tools, and I'm always approved because, like all of us, I suspect we have proof that we're a charitable organization or a nonprofit, and most of these groups want to help you out. So I imagine there's a cheaper way to do it, but you can see this is a little more pricey. I certainly wouldn't need enterprise, but this might cost you $40 a month to play around with this one. So this one, I think I would say is a little bit harder to use than VideoScribe, but I would say it has more features. So Doodly would let you remove something in an image. So if you had a courtroom and it had an American flag in the back, you could just remove that one little chunk of that drawing, which is nice. You don't have that with the other option. So again, pros and cons of both. I'm not an expert in either, but I've been playing around with both for the purposes of today, but also to teach myself. So, I mean, those are definitely places to start. And when we get to the discussion part, you can tell me, oh, Fiona, those aren't any good. We use this, we use that. So I'm sure there's people on the call who know more about this than me. So this is an example of kind of what it looks like in the background. So this is like a little quick fake doodly thing that I created that I'm going to show you, and we're going to actually like live edit it together if we have time. But this is an example of a little cheesy drawing that I did, and I mean, it's literally 1 second long, but just even though it's cumbersome to stop sharing, I thought I could show you that. I'll just stop sharing again and go back to share my screen. I really wish that that Zoom would allow you to share your entire screen. It's a super slightly annoying fact that it can't, but I'll go here to this. This is like literally something I made today, just for today. So it's very, very short, but I'll go here and play it, and it's like 2 seconds long. But just to give you an example that the drawings in Doodly are a little better, I would say. And, but you know, it's a little harder to use. So this is like literally 2 seconds long, just to kind of show you.
This is an example of a voiceover that I would record after I'd made all the different images and storyboards from a video. So in this case, I'm imagining I'm doing a video about how to deal with mechanics and auto body shops and your rights as a consumer in Ontario.
So I would have a script that described kind of what the law is around getting your car fixed and how long the warranty of the work done lasts for. So I sort of set the stage. I have the drawing that happens while I go through the boring legal stuff. And then I would show an agreement and I would read aloud for emphasis that you have a 30-day warranty, just to help really punch the point. So yeah, not, you know, and I'm not going to win an Academy Award, but that is an example of just the difference in sort of what you end up getting at the end of each one. So they're very similar in what they spit out. I think Doodly has more of kind of a uniformity to it, in the sense that, I'm just going to go from a current slide. It just produces, like, the drawings tend to be more uniform and the whole thing kind of looks like more of a system. And then of course that doesn't mean you can't bring in other images. So again, it's worth like deciding which tool that you want to use, maybe doing a trial of both. The other thing I wanted to mention, which is super obvious considering that we're literally doing one right now, which is we are recording a Zoom webinar, and that's making a video. But you can think about Zoom creatively in other ways, and it doesn't have to be Zoom. Just Zoom's pretty ubiquitous, like everyone's kind of on Zoom because they were smart enough to make their product free for every single person during a pandemic. So people who are going to their religious services via Zoom, sadly, they're going to memorial services by Zoom too. But Zoom is something that a lot of people are comfortable joining and participating in, and it has really good recording features and options. So you don't have to use Zoom. You can use any screen recording tool. There's local software that can record your screen, but there's also all of the webinar tools that basically let you record and screen share you could use. So again, super obvious, but if you wanted to make a very quick how-to video, I've done it for training videos that are even internal on how to use a complicated website or a tool. So I guess advantages of screen recording, incredibly easy to create, a little bit harder to edit, I would say, because if I'm recording a 1-hour webinar and somebody makes a mistake, which happens all the time, like halfway through a webinar on the SERB, they misstate how many days you have to apply because it's changed since, you know, and then they ask me to edit it. I can't do that because I mean, somebody could, but I don't have the ability to go halfway into a presentation, slice in a new recording, you know, so it's a little bit harder to edit, but it's incredibly easy to create. I mean, we're literally doing it as we speak. It's great for giving a tour of something you want to show, or perhaps like technical instructions to a website or software on your computer or something. You don't have to, again, be a filmmaker or have people be in the same room. It's free. I mean, obviously, some of the extended features of Zoom, you have to maybe get an account in terms of your organization, but as things go, for basic stuff, Zoom would be totally free. And you can turn the video on and turn that workshop that you're giving over the internet into a video, but you can also make it an interview. So I'm going to show you an example that a colleague did a combination of Zoom and Video Scribe to kind of make a cool video on children's rights by having like a 2-person interview done over Zoom. You can also live cast. I think we actually, PLEAC did a webinar with the brilliant people at Educalois on how to screencast your Zoom through Facebook and YouTube and stuff. And that's a whole other thing. But in theory, there's no reason you can't use Zoom to have it be a Facebook Live. And then Facebook Live creates a recording too. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways to do that kind of stuff. And at the very minimum, you can just record your voice going through a short PowerPoint presentation. So that's kind of a no-brainer, but it's worth mentioning because we all have to figure out how to use free stuff to make simple things. So I wanted to show you a super, super quick example of how to, let me just, again, I'm going to get out of here because it's not great to show video. But this is like a 2-second long video. So basically what I did to make this video was I opened up a particular page on Steps to Justice that I wanted to give a tour of, for example. And I went into my Zoom settings and I just said record screen sharing only. And that meant that there wasn't my little head in the corner and that kind of thing. And I just want to stop sharing and take you back to the browser so that you can see what that ends up looking like. So again, as I said before, you are not going to win any Academy Awards, but this is an example of me giving a fake little shared screen video that I made for today's meeting. The nice thing about Zoom cloud recordings is it creates an automatic audio transcript of everything you're doing. It can have mistakes. I have to edit those all the time because we do land acknowledgements, and man, does the computer make mistakes in the pronunciation of Indigenous nations, but I can fix those. But anyway, here's a really quick example just to show you how that would work. Hi there. This is an example of how you can use Zoom as a screen sharing tool. For example, I am showing a particular tool that we have on the Steps to Justice website called our hotspot tool. It allows us to upload an image. In this case, it's a form used by the landlord-tenant board related to rent payment agreements that people have to work out with their landlords for unpaid rent. And this is an example where down in the form, where we took an image and scanned it, we've added these little hotspots that let people know that, you know, certain things that might be in the form that tenants don't have to agree to, and so on. And that's it. So that, again, an example just for today's meeting of a very basic way that you can use a tool that you're already using right now to meet with me to do this kind of work and make a really simple little video. So this is an example of a blend that my colleague did of Zoom and one of those animation whiteboard tools. So he made sure he had a really high, you can see Jesse Mark, our new lawyer at Clio. It's weird in the age of pandemics because he's fantastic and he's my coworker and I've never met him. And I really hope someday I can. I find this is just so weird that you can work with people and never meet them. Although as a techie, I do that all the time with developers, but it's different when your actual brick and mortar colleagues are people that you have still not met, even though they got hired in March. But anyway, he decided to create a video with a colleague of his that used to work with at Justice for Children and Youth. So he did an interview over Zoom, and then he took the Zoom footage and then he imported that into his timeline and then also did a little whiteboard animation. So it's a neat little blend. Again, not public, I think. It's still something they're working on, but I wanted to kind of show you that. It's a little bit longer, but I wanted to share my screen through YouTube and show you that video. So here is that video, and I won't show you the whole thing because it's not really long, but it's 3 minutes and 51 seconds. And whoops, what did I do? Sorry, I shared my slides instead of sharing my screen. Forgive me for that. I'm going to go back to YouTube, and this is the interview with Emily Chan. So I'm going to play just a little bit, long enough to give you a taste of how Jesse was able to combine his Zoom interview with a bit of animation that he was experimenting with. So here we go.
You often talk about young people and children as independent rights holders. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
An independent rights holder is a person who has legal rights that belong to them and that they have a right to exercise those rights on their own if they want to. There's no switch at 18 that automatically grants children these independent legal rights. They have them often from birth and as they mature, and by the mid-teens, they have almost all the rights that adults have. Our office is guided by the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child that says that all children have a right to be heard.
Can you tell me, why is it a good thing for us to view children and youth as independent rights holders?
It's really important to recognize children as independent rights holders because it gives benefits to both the individual child themselves as they develop, as well as to society as a whole.
So that goes on a bit longer, and that's certainly in my slides if you want to watch it. But I will stop sharing now just because I wanted just to show you an example. So I didn't make this particular video, but I suspect that what he did was he may have taped him asking his questions after separately on like a high def camera or something, but and then added that into the footage of her speaking through Zoom. But I think he did the whole thing through Zoom, and then he just knew to not stare at his webcam directly, but kind of talk off to the side. And Jesse, I think, has experience in making social media type videos from prior positions he's had. So he's probably a better person to do this webinar than I am. But that's an example where he then took VideoScribe and he did little segments and then he pulled them into the timeline and kind of made the whole thing. So I think that's an interesting example of how you don't have to choose. Sometimes you can do both. The other thing I wanted to show you guys, which again, you may know everything I'm already showing you or you may not, but another tool that I rely on for everything is Canva. And Canva is a free, although there's, like all these tools, there's more features if you pay, but you can get so much out of this tool, the free version. So Canva is a web-based graphic design tool. So I've been making all my graphics that I use for social media for Clio using this tool forever. I don't actually know how to use Illustrator and Photoshop particularly well, and the things that professional graphic designers use. But the great thing about it being web-based is that we went into a pandemic and everything I'd ever designed was just waiting for me the next time I went to a browser. And that's true of every tool that I'm showing you. So having tools that are web-based is great for the fact that we're all being thrown into our home computers that don't have some of the software that we may have had at work. But the reason I'm showing you this is because A, it's fantastic and you can use it to make social media graphics and Instagram posts and invitations and posters and infographics. But also if you're stuck because you don't have the right image in those programs. So let's say your video is on something kind of obscure, like you want to make a video on your rights, during COVID to a clean, health, and safe workplace. And VideoScribe or Doodly don't have any images that make it look like a pandemic. I mean, why would they? So you may say to yourself, I wish I had some graphics that I'm missing here. I just see a chat here. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything important that you're asking, but it's hard to see the chat when I'm screen sharing, but I will do that in just a second. Sorry. Yeah. So let's say you're missing a few images and you just kind of wish that you could find some drawings to kind of make that video work in ways that the limitations of the two tools might have. So there's an example of, I looked up so that you can choose what kind of graphic you want to make. And so in Canva, I chose just a standard poster type graphic. And then I went over to the side under elements, and under photos, they have like massive amounts of beautiful stock photography. So I looked up under elements, I looked up coronavirus, and there's this massive library of half decent looking guys and girls, women, in masks. And then there's even one of like hand sanitizer and air. Anyway, so the idea just to show you that was like, you can create those and then you just export them as images and pull them into your animation the same way you would pull in anything else. So, you may have to use a combination of tools because our work is unique and most of the tools that are sold are meant to help people sell, subscriptions to their yoga classes. They're not necessarily meant for PLE. So like anything with technology, you're always adapting things that were meant for profit into our little universe. But I wanted to show you that tool because it's a great way to make infographics. I've made like application process graphics in there, and I'm trying to make flow charts. It's just a great tool that you can then save. And someone else can go in and just do a slight edit copying of something you've done. So I use Canva to make all my custom question of the days and all my little things if you follow us on Twitter and Facebook. But anyway, so the pitfalls or limitations of these tools that I wanted to mention are probably obvious. One is, I mentioned, is that sometimes there's limited drawings and images to choose from. So you might not find what you need. Some of the stuff that we have, unfortunately, given our work, some of the stuff we have to make videos about are sad and tragic, and there might not be drawings about domestic violence or something that are appropriate. So, you are limited to the catalog of things that exist, and sometimes you might have to pay for certain images that, once you pay for them, they're yours to use again, but that can cost you, $1.11 or $9 for a particular image. And so, it can be something where sometimes I'm working from home and I have to spend $3 on this image, I better get permission. It can be a bit cumbersome. But also, if you mix too many different things from different places and you import like a scene of a hospital room, and then you bring in my weird colored graphic of somebody with coughing, and then you also use a logo, it can look amateurish, of course. It kind of reminds you of our PowerPoint presentations and Word documents from the 90s that were filled with clip art. So, it's certainly better to try to stay with a bit of a uniform look and feel, although certainly you just saw my videos and they're hardly professional looking, but it's one of those things where they can look a little amateurish. I think that's okay. I think whiteboard, because it's a playful drawing type animation, I think it's more forgiving that it looks a little amateurish. The default scenes do tend to be American, so there's lots of gavels and lots of scales of justice and courthouses with eagles and American flags everywhere. And the next thing I was going to say is not everyone is born to be a voice actor. So I really like doing these voiceover things all the time. So now people are asking me to just do the voiceover on their videos, which I love to do. But that makes a lot of people nervous, the talking part. And that someone in your organization is going to have to do the talking. So that's sometimes a thing where the people who make the videos do not want to be the ones who do the voice. It can be a little cumbersome to collaborate on one of these because I can't really have you edit my version that easily. So also, once I do one, it might take me a few hours to do it, and you might want me to have chosen a different folder image, a minute in, and it's hard to explain that. So it's easier to take a print PLE document and just put track changes all over the thing, and I just edit it. It's a little bit harder to collaborate on video because it's, unfamiliar to a lot of us because we don't make film, but it's worth trying. And it's sometimes you have to make it and then go back and figure out what would have worked better next time in terms of the planning. And finally, Zoom videos can be quite low quality if the internet connection or equipment used by participants isn't optimal. And with COVID-19, a lot of us are at home and we have limited equipment. Our computers weren't never meant to be our main workstations and so on. So a lot of the time the sound may not be great on the person you're interviewing with or your co-presenter or whatever. Hopefully my video is okay for today. But I may be making that very point right now by showing you videos that you can't hear or see very well. So in terms of how to plan, I am learning this stuff as I go. So I'm sure if other people on the call today have planned video projects, they might have 9,000 more steps, but I just thought I'd try to give you like a super basic bulleted list of the things I might do if I was going to plan it. So one is to create a simple project plan. Like, what is your video going to be about? Who's it intended for? Do you want to do it as a whiteboard? Do you want to do it as a talking head interview over Zoom? What's your optimal length? Also ask yourself things like, is this going to be on a website that they're already on that just helps, give a summary of the content that they could read more about? Or is this going on to Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, and is the idea for people to find out you exist? So is it really promotional or is it more informational? So certainly if you were already on the Steps to Justice website, I wouldn't show a whole bunch of screen captures of where on the website I found what I'm looking for, because they're already there. So I might minimally brand them if they're already intended, their home is ultimately on the website you're already on. But if I'm trying to talk about the stuff we have that's new and noteworthy, then of course I'm going to do a lot more brandy stuff and sort of show people how to enter the URL in the video and that kind of stuff. So once you have the plan and you kind of agree to some degree, this may not be what other people do, but it makes sense just get a lawyer and or editor to write a script that gets the legal stuff right. Because the worst thing would be is if I'm just guessing and I totally make up my own facts about whether you can get evicted for having a cat. So I got the housing lawyer to just write really, really short statements of fact. And from then I can stretch it a little bit into a script. And then if I was very well organized, which we haven't done yet at Clio, but you would develop a storyboard plan. So you might create like a long table in Word, and you might have a box, and you would say, you would have the sentence from the script, and then you might say suggested images include, and that way you could guide the poor person who has to make the video, like show two people at a job interview, or show a store with a manager and a staff person talking, or something, like suggest. And they may not be able to find all those images, but at least the person's not totally guessing what kind of things that you wish might be available. And again, it's hard because the people who might give you that feedback, they don't know what's in storyboard. They don't know what the images are and the tools. So that whole storyboard thing can be a bit tricky, because how do they know what to suggest? They've never made a video. So it's okay that it's not perfect. I've never had anyone send me a storyboard plan because they don't have any idea what the options are. So I just work from the script, do the best I can, and then I send it to them to talk about it. But if you were going to be better organized, you'd probably do a storyboard plan so that you had a little more hand in what the people picked. And then you make your video, which if we have time, I was going to show you what it looks like to make one of these things. It's not very hard. And then when you're done, you record a draft voiceover, and you do it right in the tool. So you just press the little record button and you start talking. And then the video you've just made is playing in front of you and you talk. So at least, the video is literally playing while you decide what to emphasize. So it makes it much easier to match things up with visuals. And then you export it and put it up on Vimeo, which is free, or YouTube, and just make it private so that only people with the link can see it. So the links I showed you today are not publicly available. And you send it to your colleagues, and then they say, oh, good job, that was great. However, it's too long, or I don't think the drawing works very well, it's too fast, or whatever. And then you revise accordingly, you make changes to the script, you make changes to the images, you re-record the voiceover, and you just keep rinsing, repeating, and doing versions till you get it right. And it doesn't take months or anything, but it can take, a few hours to kind of get it right. And then once you're happy with it, you can upload it to Vimeo, which is free and has no commercials. YouTube, which can have commercials, but if you get a YouTube for nonprofits, then you can your organization can have its own YouTube page without commercials, and other video sharing sites. But you can also just stick it on your website or put it up on Facebook or Twitter. Most of these tools also have a built-in cheesy musical background, so you can pick from hundreds of like acoustic guitar, gentle piano, like super fast disco background music, which is, I can't imagine ever appropriate for our work, but so you can have your voiceover and then have like a gentle music playing in the background, and you can do the whole thing with these tools. So I'd love to go to questions right now, and if anyone has any, but also if we have time and it's hard again to see, I'm going to stop sharing. It's a little hard to see all the questions and also screen sharing, but if people are interested, I could do a little really quick tour, not tour, but like just quickly show you how you would actually make one of these things. And that might or might not scare you off, but hopefully it would let you go, oh, cool, it's not that hard, you know? So if you guys are into that, and I think Hannah's facilitating, so she could sort of tell me, but if there's no time, then we'll just make this part 2. But if there is, then I could sort of jump in and show you the 2 tools really quick. Would that be okay?
I think there is time. Yeah, I think just right now I see in the Q&A we're good, but in the chat we have like, I think about a few comments, but 1 question, but we can get to that one at the end. I think here from Allison. So up to you, Fiona.
Okay, well, why don't I just show you guys and we can see what you think. Okay, so Video Scribe. I'm just going to share my screen and show you kind of how I log in. So the whole thing is there. And you can see there's just a couple different things that I've made. So the one that I showed you earlier was that how to apply for a job with a youth record. And you can see that I made 2 versions of it, and they're quite different. But this is just a little fake one that I made today. It barely exists. So I just was like farting around. But I can sort of show you how it works. But maybe it'd be faster, just start from totally scratch here. So create a new scribe. And then if I was going to be really interactive, I'd be like, quick, show me give me an example of a legal problem and let's just do it. Like I'd kind of do improv. So somebody give me a suggestion here. Hannah, read me what it says. So throw a legal problem at me here and we'll see what we can do with Video Scribe here. Anybody got an idea? Just don't pick something really hard. Like don't pick an administrative tribunal way inside, like how to do a continuing record in family law. I pick something a little more exciting that, okay, any suggestions?
Just looking at the chat, not seeing any suggestions. Just,
oh, whatever.
Oh, someone Drew wrote evicted from my home.
All right, good. So we go over here and we look for settings. So we can say like room and see what we have here. So you can see there's a house. Hopefully you can see that there's like some images of, you know, a toilet, a fan. You can kind of, here's an apartment, I think. Let me just see. Oh, no, that looks like a hospital waiting room. So then I don't want that. So I'm going to trash that particular one. I'm just going to hit trash. Yes, delete the element. But basically what you're doing is you're picking, right? So this is the search. It's a little bit, it can be a little bit, but I'm going to say living room. See what comes up. And here looks like a living room. So then I'm going to take that and just zoom it. And that's my first example of an image. And then that's just going to be there. There's some default. I can go in here and sort of check the defaults on that. And I can pick the drawing hand and whether it's a person of color or a white person. I can even make it a weird zipper because that's more for if you're doing a fade, you can kind of make the image disappear and that kind of stuff. And you can change the hand. But then I would kind of go in here, let's say, and I would pick a form, and that might be a eviction notice, for example. So I would just kind of go in here and see what images they have here. And I would look in here and I would scroll around and look for a form. And so I might just take a standard kind of empty piece of paper type diagram and fill it in. This isn't the best example, but then I kind of move it to somewhere on my timeline. And so then I can go in here and I can hit type. And then my text can be, you know, eviction notice. And again, I'm just kind of doing this live. Obviously, you'd put more work into it. But then you can just sort of just take that image and turn it over. And then at any time, you can just hit play. And then you can kind of see what you have. So then you can kind of imagine that this is your, you know, opening voiceover. Like, let's say you're, you know, one of the problems is eviction. And one day you come and your landlord arrives with a Form 1 notice of eviction, and then boom, you know, and then there'll be a bit of a zoom, and then this is just sort of what you're talking about. And then at any time you might want to then bring in a real image. So let's say you're like, well, there's obviously isn't an eviction notice sitting around. So then you can kind of go like this and pull one from your computer. So I'm going to take this standard lease form, even though this is supposed to be about eviction, but I just don't happen to have an eviction form waiting on my computer for this exact moment or anything. But I'm not going to have this drawn. I'm going to have it move in smoothly, and I'm going to have it be, maybe I'm going to bring it down here, and oops, I'm going to pull it down here. Example. And then I'm going to see how that looks, and I'm going to play it again from the start, but you can also just play from that particular element. So, you know, you're kind of getting the point here. It's not that hard. So, you know, again, like a health and safety video, you might show a workplace, a construction site, you might, but you can also pull in individual people. So, you know, we kind of gave a form here with an eviction notice, but a better example in the next one was that we took an existing actual thing that is in Ontario called a residential tenancies agreement. So this, you might actually take a form from your provincial equivalent of the landlord tenant board and kind of say, this is what the form's going to look like if they show up to evict you. So let's say you want to, you know, show a person here. So you're going to, go over here and pick a person, and then you can start to see the people. So this is when it gets sort of complicated. You have pages and pages of people, and so you have to kind of pick, like, do I want? And there are people doing bizarre things. There's people who are you know on roller skates or whatever, but you can sort of pick by gender if you really want to pick like a person who's mad or upset. So maybe, you know, this is the poor person who's been evicted, blah blah blah. So that's an example of kind of how it works. And then when you're done, you can play with all the individual elements. So let's say you wanted this particular drawing of a person to take longer or shorter, and you didn't want the video wasting time kind of showing this person being drawn. So you might want to go in here and adjust the timing. So you can say, I don't want it to take 8 seconds for this person to be drawn. I want it to be fast. So I'm just going to make it 5 seconds. And then you just save it. And again, you kind of play and play and play until you get it just so. And then you go over here to the little microphone and you record your voiceover. And when you go to record the voiceover, of course, the video that you have made so far plays while you're recording. And then you just keep playing and editing it, and it's actually kind of fun. I see some questions in the chat, but it's hard for me to see them when I'm screen sharing. But that's an example of how that works. And it's a very fast example, but you can do a lot of stuff with it. You can kind of zoom in more. You can pull the camera out. There's sort of like these little tricks you can see here with the camera position. And that kind of shows if you want to zoom or zoom out and that kind of stuff. So you can play around with that. And there's lots of sort of different people and settings. And that's basically the gist of both of the tools. This one has more color. The Doodly one tends to be very, very black and white, which again, I think sometimes is good because it creates more of a kind of clean professional look. But at the same time, it's you know, it might be a little harder to use. I think this one can be used by people who have no experience whatsoever with video or audio editing. So I would say it's extremely easy to use. I'm just gonna try to get to the chat, but when I click on the chat, I cannot see it because I'm in full screen mode. So I'm gonna stop sharing just so I can sort of see the question there.
Maybe I love Drew's comment.
Oh, Drew's like, you're brave to do a live demo. Yeah, well, we're a fool. I'm open to both interpretations. The second tool I wanted to show you is the other one, which is Doodly. So I'm going to share my screen here. And Doodly has, I think, kind of nicer drawings, but it's a little bit harder to use. And just because I happen to prefer VideoScribe doesn't mean, now that just preparing for today, I was like, maybe I should do my next one in Doodly. This is kind of cool. So this was an example of one that I made, like I imagined that we would do like a sample car repair video or whatever. So I found these elements. But let's go back to my videos and we'll create a new one. And you have a choice of like whiteboard, chalkboard, glassboard, custom. Don't even necessarily know what those are, but let's just do whiteboard because that tends to be what we're doing. And so with this one, we want to pick scenes, and you can see there's all these different categories. So this is a living room, so I might use that one if I was doing that eviction video. This is one of a school bus. There's one of a beach, a hospital room, and so on and so forth. This is like a woman whose car was broken, but I wasn't crazy about the picture of the woman. So the one thing I like about Doodly is I can pick a certain element and get rid of it. So I can say, well, I like the car, but I don't really want that particular woman. I want to go over here and Abraham Lincoln. I want Abraham Lincoln to have had his car broken because that makes sense. No, it doesn't. Sorry. Okay, so the point is that you can see there's silly stuff in here. There's literally Abraham, which again, I don't think he had a lot of problems with car repair warranties not being serviced properly. But you can kind of see that there's the default a little bit on Doodly is like silly white dude from the Jetsons. So it's not, you know, the best in terms of diversity. But if you, and then they have like African boy, and it's a bit, but anyway, but there were,
I want to
yes.
chime in just because there's a comment that fits into what you're doing now, and someone's asking
Yes.
if there are any drawings of people with disabilities and their assistive devices.
Yeah, let's see. So again, you know, it's as sensitively put together as the people at Doodly, but I certainly hope that if I put disability, aha. So yeah, we have some people here, lady in wheelchair 3, lady in wheelchair 4. So let's put lady in wheelchair here. And then you can do little things. I think you can, you know, edit the individual images a little bit more. I don't, like if I put, you know, deaf, I don't know if they had like a picture of someone doing sign language. No. So there is also things, there's a marketplace, which is like a marketplace of images that you can look at. They're kind of weird, as you can, I don't even know if you can see that because it opened a browser. You probably can't see that.
No.
Ugh, so annoying. Okay, escape. Sorry, I'm gonna go back. So now are you back at, I have to stop sharing. This is what happens with Zoom when you jump out of into the browser here. So I will go here. So this is an example of the Doodly bundles, and they have like bundles on different images, like weight loss. They have like an entire pack of like pictures of people they perceive to be overweight, and then people who are doing yoga and have lost weight, which is kind of like ridiculous. But they have food, pictures of dancing French fries, and so on. But for our purposes, they, you know, you might find you know, some that would work, like business, I guess, if you were doing yeah, like if you were doing occupational health and safety videos, or you're doing stuff about healthcare, or you're doing stuff about your rights at work, this would give you like every imaginable. Unfortunately, it would be a lot of business people in suits, white guys in suits. But anyway, you can see that there are some limits to that particular set of things, but they have a lot. And they even have like, I think they have, you know, collections for education that would show kids in school and all this kind of stuff. So if you don't find what you're looking for, I'm going to, again, stop sharing my browser now and go back to the program and make sure that I am back in Doodly. Okay. So yeah, so then you kind of do that, and then you go to your next scene. So you would go to the timeline down at the bottom. So if you can see the bottom of your screen, Video Scribe tool kind of took care of this, but this starts to get into more of very basic video and audio editing, in the sense that there's a timeline and you put things onto the timeline, which is a little more similar to traditional video making software. So it's better. It just takes a little more experience, but again, I don't have any, and I figured it out. But you would kind of go, you want to add a new scene. So I'm going to add a new scene, and I go back to my various things here. And so I want to get that mechanic. So I'm going to go to people, and I want to talk about that mechanic and how he's going to rip me off. No offense to the mechanic community. I'm just saying, you know, so then I might, yeah, so here's my mechanic. I don't know why he's called Bucko. He doesn't look like a mechanic to me. But anyway, okay, so I'm going to delete him, and I'm going to choose this other mechanic who has his leg on a wheel, which I guess is more authentic to what he would be doing if he were my mechanic. And I guess he has an iPad, and he's giving me an estimate. So then I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm going to have to go over here and say like receipt, and look up and see if there's any images for a receipt. I'm going to go to props, and I'm going to go like memo or something and see what can come up. Memory card, that's not helpful. I'm going to say form. And I'm going to go over here, and then I have my admission form, but that's not right. So the nice thing about this is sometimes you can actually take one of these little things and you can just get rid of little elements in them. I don't think that one's right because it's way too specific, but there are ones that I had picked earlier, I think. Let me just see, all shared and so on. There's lots that you can grab from other people, but every imaginable one is there. So I might say bill, and see if something comes up there. Might be a picture of an invoice. That's what I wanted. I'm going to go down here and kind of drag the invoice and that kind of thing. And then you can imagine that that's my next scene, and so on, and then so forth and so forth and so forth. And there's lots of different currencies. There's piles of money. You can kind of like convey something through props and images and all that kind of stuff. So I think, you know, you kind of get the general gist. And then what you do at any time is you kind of preview what you've done so far. And this, of course, is a completely silly video that I'm just making live in front of all of you, but you can kind of see what's happening. So when you pick this image of this busted up car, you can see, I can also choose to change my hand so that it doesn't look like a, you know, a white dude in a sweater. I could make it a, you know, a person of color, whatever I wanted. But this little image is playing. Then I have my woman in the wheelchair and she moves out of the way. And then I have my mechanic dude. So you can see with Doodly that the illustrations are a little bit higher quality, I would say. And that may be the reason to pick it. You know, it's just a tiny bit harder to use, but I still think it's worth learning. And then at that point, you would come down to the bottom and you would record your voice. And so you would click on the little microphone. Oops. Click down here on the microphone. It may not let me do that because I'm sharing a screen, but basically it starts playing. And then I do my magic FM Fiona voice and I start to talk about the issue. And then later on, I match my animation to the timings I've used in my speech until I get it just the way I want it. And then when I'm done, I export. And this is true of either program. So by showing you this, you can export it into a variety of different formats. I only understand 2 of these, but the default is MP4, which is the main universal format that you'd use to stick any video. So when you make a video of like a birthday party you're at on your phone, you're making an MP4. So MP4 is a very standard format and you can make it high res or normal res or whatever. And off you go, continue, it saves it to your local computer and then you can upload it to Vimeo or YouTube. And the difference with VideoScribe is it allows you to go directly to Vimeo. Like you could, if you had a Vimeo membership sort of login for your organization right from VideoScribe, you can just say export to and once you have it on Vimeo, then it's like people can watch it, but that's not the place you go to edit it. So then you have, if people don't like your version, you got to go back and edit this again and again and again. So those are the really, really quick demos that I hope to give. And then I'm seeing if there's any questions. I'm happy to answer them if there are.
Just given the time that we're sort of up, but I did just see 2 questions that might be just as like a quick response if possible. But I see one that's, what program did you use to create the Zoom video with animation spliced in?
You got it. Okay, so that, I'm just going back to my slides here. So that one was done with VideoScribe. Where are we here? So yeah, he made that. And again, I'm sure Jesse would be happy to talk more about that. But it's my understanding that the video, where's the one that he did? Yeah. So what he did was he made a Zoom. He did a Zoom. He made sure he had a really good high def camera and he did a Zoom interview with split screen between the 2 people. Talking and having conversation. Then he downloaded that recording from Zoom. And then that was an element that he dragged into the timeline in VideoScribe. Either that, or he made the little cute animations that you saw of the girl getting older and her rights in various folders. He made that in VideoScribe and then he pulled that into another program where he took the 2 different videos and he put them together in a timeline. So again, he may have a video editing software that he used to pull from those 2 things, but I'm pretty sure you couldn't use Zoom to pull in animation, but you could use VideoScribe to pull in a saved video in Zoom. So I think you could do that with any of them. That's my understanding, although I'm happy to connect you with him. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to other people about how he made it, but that's my understanding.
Perfect.
Next.
And I think just one more question here. Maybe we'll just squeeze the last one in. It says, can you tell us again how to get a transcript of a Zoom call appear, or is it something that is only available when you're watching a recording of a Zoom call?
Oh, that's a good question. Being a Zoom ninja. So yeah, so I don't think you can do that with a free account, and I don't think you can do it. You definitely can't get an audio transcript if you save the Zoom to your local computer. So I don't know which one Hannah's doing right now, but if you record it, if you save it to the cloud, and you go into the recording settings that are associated with your account on Zoom, one of the choices would be that you wish to have one of those things saved. And it saves it locally. And then when your recording's ready, you get an email that says like your cloud recording is ready. And then you go in there and you'll see it there. And then you can download it and edit it. So that's what I do. I take the sort of, they're basically a closed captions file. They're in a VTT format, which is the format for closed captions. And I take it down and I do a search and replace because it thinks Cleo is a woman with the spelled capital C-L-E-O. So I do a control search and replace and I change all the Cleos to uppercase. And I change the how to Wishone which I don't even want to tell you how they spell that, but I try and change some of the different names of the various things in our land, and then I fix the names. But it doesn't do it. It's pretty good. It would have done fine with an event like this, I think, but it probably would. It makes mistakes with legal things. I think it thinks Serb is people from Serbia, or like someone who is Serbian. So anyway, so yeah, you do have to do a little bit of fixing, but you don't have to be a special person to do that, because the captions just open up in the default text editor on your computer, which is Notepad or WordPad, and you just very carefully look around and fix them and then save them. And then when you go into Vimeo, there's a setting in Vimeo that lets you add a captions file, and you just browse, click your things, turn on captions, and then your final video on YouTube or Vimeo has closed captions, and it looks all accessible and wonderful, and you didn't have to actually have that done. Now, if you have it done professionally, they're going to do a way better job, but it's several $100s for, I would say, I think the Canadian Hair Society charges like a couple of $100 for a 1-hour webinar, and $400, I think, and it's worth it. I mean, that's for the skill they bring to it. I don't mean to suggest that that's not good value, but it's just sometimes out of everybody's budget. So does anyone have any other questions? Because I don't want to go over time, and it's Friday, and don't you all have something? Well, I guess for you in BC, it's like to stop acting like the day is ending, because
I think I don't see any more questions coming in at this time, but I see a lot of lovely comments. And Fiona, you did such a fantastic job, and I think we even see, you know, this isn't as scary anymore. This is super helpful and all this stuff. So that's fantastic to hear. If there's anything else, Fiona, that you wanted to, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm just going to move it to the screen that has my email address, and to encourage any of you to drop me a line at any time, because that's the wonderful thing about PLEAC, is that we all can kind of ask each other for help, and there's no other organizations in the world that do what we all do. Like, we're all these like little weird one-off entities that do public legal education all day. So it's nice to have colleagues, especially when we're all working in our basements. So if anyone has any questions about using these tools, but more importantly, if you do make a video using these, please send it to me, because again, I'm teaching myself, and I'm sure all of you will do a much better job when you do your own. So please share, and if you do one of these things, send it to me. I'd love to see it, and it'll give me some great idea for how you made family law court filing your documents more exciting than I was able to. And I think Drew's sharing one that he did, and I'm going to be hoping I can, and also downloading the chat, right? Some of these really great ideas are going to vanish when we close this meeting.
No, absolutely. And that's what I'm going to do is, if anyone wants, if Fiona, if they didn't catch your email, please reach out to me. Everyone should have my email and my contact. I'm happy to connect anyone with anyone, especially Fiona. I do have this chat, the transcript. So if there's any good, like Drew did pop in there, the Biteable link,
yep.
You can send that off as well as the slides, Fiona, and that you've put together. Thank you so much, as well as the recording, because I know a lot of people couldn't tune in. Like you said, it is a Friday afternoon, but I know there was a lot of excitement, and a lot of people are going to be checking out the recording at a later time as well. So
super
fantastic. So please reach out to me, or if you grab Fiona's email, get in touch with her directly. But otherwise, thank you so much, Fiona. That was fantastic.
Oh, my pleasure. And I will send my slides to Hannah the second this is over, and she'll get them all to you. And please stay in touch and be safe and take care of yourselves and have a nice weekend and go make videos.
Exactly. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.